Support for Fameless is brought to you by Ready Quick Dry Cleaners. Does your dream job pay nightmare wages? Did you just have to repurpose that smelly dry clean-only shirt from the dumpster down the street? Well, good news, my smelly frugal friend. Ready Quick Dry Cleaners is right around the corner, where they do quality work at competitive prices. And lucky for us, they'll have it ready quick. That's Ready Quick, your trusted full-service dry cleaners. Family-owned for 35 years.
To welcome and greet you way down on that little high street.
Hey, I just got a notification for a new podcast. Fameless. A podcast for the rest of us. Huh, sounds kind of interesting. I'll check it out. I got nothing better to do.
Glad you could stop by. Welcome to Fameless.
Yeah, it's exciting, right?
Your podcast for the rest of us. It is
Your
exciting.
own podcast.
That's a lot. It's just us hanging out and talking. I don't want to know that I'm responsible for something.
Well, this sucks. You're listening to Fameless, a podcast for the rest of us, where we examine the curious human desire for fame. We'll talk with fameless people about what fuels their desire for fame and the challenges they faced in pursuit of it. For the only people who know more about what it takes to make it in this world than those who made it are those who didn't. So come along with us on our journey down the bumpy road to fame, where we'll discover the only real difference between the famous and the fameless is one right turn. Hello, I'm Guy Hulling, and welcome to Fameless, a podcast for the rest of us. In this episode, we found it more appropriate to forego the guest in favor of the first-person narrative style of Episode 1, as it lends itself to the chosen theme. That is, does art imitate life? Or, as Oscar Wilde boldly asserted, does life imitate art more? The mimetic theory of art has been around for ages, and I often find myself somewhere in the middle of it. I was having lunch with a good friend recently, when he suddenly developed a case of the hiccups. Although rather mild at their onset, in time they grew much more apparent, resulting in rather loud, convulsive gasps of air. People were beginning to stare. It was at that point I realized life definitely mimics art more. For all I could think about was the scene from The Odd Couple where Jack Lemmon makes this horrible noise repeatedly in an effort to clear his sinuses while Walter Matthau looks on horrified and asks,
"Stop that, will you? What are you doing?"
Episode 5, Scene 1, All the World's a Movie Set. According to Shakespeare, all the world's a stage. In my case, it's a movie set. In that classic chick flick, Sleepless in Seattle, with its equally classic dialogue penned by the late, great Nora Ephron, when Rosie O'Donnell tells Meg Ryan she doesn't want to be in love, she wants to be in love in a movie, I get it. Completely. I'm not saying I live my life like it's a movie, fabricating moments through which I act, but rather, I live my life interpreting moments like scenes from a movie through which I live. What can I say? I love the movies. I want to be in the movies. Heck, I want to be in the movies in a movie. Sometimes so much so that I believe I am. Although not recognized as an official psychosis in the APA manual, there is a modern personality disorder called the Truman Show Syndrome, aptly named after The Truman Show, a 1998 film starring Jim Carrey who plays Truman Burbank, a man unaware he has been living his entire life on a massive soundstage where it is unknowingly filmed and televised live to an international audience. Afflicted individuals believe they are stars in their very own reality show. The only problem is, it's all in their head, often leading to paranormal paranoia. I wouldn't say I have developed such a psychosis, but I will say, there are times, plenty of times, something so coincidentally and astonishingly magical occurs that I can't help but think this must be a movie. But the walls do not separate to reveal an adoring live audience applauding some such performance or another. The set does not pull back to reveal the film crew tucked behind cameras, and no one is yelling cut. But it's a fun thought. The movies, like the human imagination that conjures them, hold the power to elevate our basic human experience to that of an ethereal one with nary an attempt to adjudicate the matter, and act as a catalyst to sublimation from physical to spiritual existence. And I, for one, cannot get enough of it. The stories of our lives are captured in movies, and those movies in turn capture our hearts through dazzling cinematography, eloquent dialogue, and mesmerizing soundtracks that grab a hold of us and whisk us off to a world of pure make-believe made so real that we believe we can reach out and touch it, grab a hold of it, and live it. I didn't understand this phenomenon as much when I was young, as there wasn't as much time between me and then as there is now, having spent far more time in this life living. But boy, it sure can wrap me up in its magical allure now. And all I have to do is see something or hear a word or a phrase or a song, and off I go into the world of cinematic wonder, unable to discern the difference between what is and what has been or will be, or if it's all just art mimicking life or life mimicking art. I heard a song the other day, These Foolish Things, an old jazz standard used in one of my all-time favorite classic movies, Penny Serenade from 1941, one of the many that I credit for having sparked my love for cinema when I was young, a song I remember hearing often growing up, and one of my favorites to this day. Suddenly, I was transported to the living room of my childhood home, where I often spent hours acting out scenes from The Lone Ranger with my miniature figurines in the potted soil of my mother's rubber tree plant, as the jazz standards poured out of the speakers of her stylish 1960s entertainment cabinet, enticing me to stop my reenactment and listen, and dream, and maybe catch an occasional ride upon a dust particle floating like a tiny magic carpet in the sunbeams that filtered through the diamond-gridded bay window panes bound for a romanticized world made perfect through such lyrical metaphoric trappings. And thoughts of all the things I thought I would one day be because of songs like these raced through my mind. It was at that point I discovered something about myself. I am an amalgam of all the characters whose lives played out to romanticized perfection in the imaginatively ingenious lyrics of these songs, which are so ingrained in me, thanks to my mother's brilliant musical taste, that sometimes I can't separate my reality from the lyrical fiction that those songs produced, and I find myself living in an alternate reality, where out of the tree of life I'll pick me a plum, and will fly to the moon to swing among the stars, and someday, when I'm awfully low and the world is cold, I will feel a glow just thinking of her and the way she looks tonight. You're listening to Fameless, a podcast for the rest of us. After the break, I'll share a spectacularly cinematic interpretation of reality once lived. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Fameless, a podcast for the rest of us. Before the break, I mentioned a spectacularly cinematic interpretation of a reality once lived. No amount of art will ever imitate this one. Episode 5, Scene 2, A Cinematic Wonder. I know I'm getting old when I start talking about the good old days, but damn, they were good.
Video computer system is... Good morning, angels.
Morning, Charlie.
I don't think I have a problem with getting older. I just have a problem saying goodbye to the things I'm not ready to let go of yet. Those things that define you, your life, your generation. Like drive-in movie theaters. I'd hardly be the same person if it weren't for the old 59 outdoor theater. And that's the truth. It towered majestically over Highway 59, not more than a mile from where I grew up. Ironically, and aptly, it opened the summer I was born and operated up until the year I graduated high school. And let me tell you, the years in between were spectacular. I remember plain as day my mother popping bags of corn, the sounds of sizzling oil and kernels exploding as they bounced off the plastic dome cover, the aromatic scent of melting butter, We would all pile in our Chevy Malibu Classic, and before we even passed through the gate, my sisters and I, like the kernels of corn, would be exploding with excitement. We would drive around the lot in search of the perfect spot, and when we found it, my father would pull in, roll down his window, secure the speaker to it, and off we all slipped into the magic of cinematic fantasy.
Show starts in 8 minutes. Yum, yum. It's time for a taste.
As the years passed, and the innocence of youth slowly but inevitably gave way to adolescent male curiosities, the majestic outdoor theater, once a foundation upon which family values stood, began to falter a bit. But to a young pubescent male, nothing could have been better. For there was nothing more majestic and titillating than the rare sighting of a female breast projected 100 times the size of life as you drove home with your family from some such place or another in the waning hours of night, a time reserved for the infamous T&A movies that more often than not featured a nurse in an inappropriately low-cut uniform.
Yes, Doctor, I'll get right on it.
Those years would give way to yet another phase in the life of the once majestic outdoor cinema as a sweet, beautiful girl from the crosstown high school rival, the North Stars, known for proudly displaying their emblematic purple star, agreed to a date. As we drove down Highway 59, we couldn't miss the movie that was playing on the screen. I'm not sure if it was on account of being a broke teenager or our disinterest in the movie playing at the time that we never made our way into the lot. But whatever the case, we did find ourselves parked in a rather small parking lot of an adjacent business, now ironically or satirically an adult video store. As we sat there in the romantic light of the movie, engulfing us in its fantastical allure, we kissed. Our romantic escapade started off rather innocently, as they all do, but quickly escalated to one of burning desire and unbridled passion, as they all do, when she lifted away her soft Angora sweater, revealing a lovely purple lace brassiere. And it was no longer the cinematic fantasy displayed on the larger-than-life screen I was enthralled with. It was the fantasy that was playing out in real life, right there in front of me. I struggled to comprehend the irony of it all, for it wasn't that long before this that I could be found with my best friend Dave Vincent sneaking under the fence of that old theater to catch a T&A flick, hoping for a glimpse of female nudity, where even though my eyes would be fixed upon the scandalous events that transpired on that great screen, I would secretly be dreaming of the day I would be making out with a beautiful, sexy, scantily clad girl. And there I was. Words were not necessary, but if they had to be spoken, the words she chose in that moment of adolescent sexual desire will live with me forever. When sitting there in her lovely purple lace brassiere asked with nervous humor, "How's this for school spirit?" Then tossed the sweater aside where it landed on the very seat I occupied years earlier as I sat between my mother and father watching a movie through the eyes of innocence. Perhaps as a metaphoric gesture to protect that little boy's eyes from the things he wasn't ready to see. But if he was anything like me, I'm sure he lifted that sweater ever so slightly, just to catch a glimpse. As I think about all the things that grand old outdoor theater represented, all the good times my family shared, I question whether or not I muddied those memories of the days of innocence with adolescent sexual curiosity. But then I'm reminded of the rite of passage, We all go through it in our own unique way. There have been many moments in my life that, at the time, may have been deemed wrong or inappropriate or misguided, but that which time has eased the discomfort projected upon us by religions, taboos, and social mores, and just left me with splendid memories of moments so profoundly life-changing that I can't help but be the utmost grateful for their occurrence, no matter the struggle they one time were. And in my most quiet moments, they softly whisper to me, among a sweet musical accompaniment, a narrative which sends that part of my imagination responsible for recollection all a-reeling, as it gleefully produces an epic movie all its own, complete with fog machines and love scenes and cinematic hues and majestic views, for no other reason than to allow me the pure joy of experiencing something so worth living in the first place, as to want to relive it again and again and again. Thank you for tuning into Fameless, a podcast for the rest of us. We hope you can join us next time when our guest will most likely be fameless, so you don't know them anyway. Until then, stay fameless. See you in the movie theater. This episode of Fameless was written, produced, and edited by myself, Guy Holling.